Going to a job interview, the woman saw a photo of her mother in a dark frame on the Millionaire's desk. Later it was discovered. Anna had always known that she was meant for something more. Growing up in the small, sleepy town of Riverton, she felt stifled by the slow pace of life and the narrow expectations that seemed to define her future. The town's few paved streets wound past old brick houses and faded shops that whispered of past glories, but Anna had bigger dreams. She spent her days working at a local bookstore, but every evening after the store closed, her mind would wander to the bustling world beyond. A world of ambition, success, and opportunity. She had long admired those who made it out of places like Riverton, people who had built empires from the ground up. As a child, she would devour books on entrepreneurship, success stories of people who had risen from nothing to wealth, and documentaries on influential figures. The idea of working for someone like James Harrison, a millionaire businessman known for his sharp mind and ruthless ambition, filled her with both excitement and terror. Her mother, Diane, often warned her about the dangers of people like James. Diane was protective, her own experiences in life leaving her cautious and wary of those who seemed too powerful. She had always kept Anna close, sheltering her from the harsh realities of the world. But Anna wasn't like her mother. She didn't want to be tied down to Riverton, to the life her mother had carved out for them. She wanted to prove that she was capable of something greater. Despite the warmth of home, the heavy weight of her mother's care had always felt more like a chain than a comfort. Anna's dreams were filled with the promise of independence, and she longed for the day when she could leave Riverton behind. The only thing standing in her way was her mother, who didn't understand why Anna was so eager to escape. As Anna prepared for the most important interview of her life, a job that could take her far from everything she knew, her heart pounded with anticipation. This wasn't just a chance to get a job, it was the key to the life she had always dreamed of. But no matter how much she yearned for success, a part of her couldn't help but wonder if her mother's warnings had some truth. Was she ready to face the consequences of her ambitions? Anna stood before the mirror in her small bedroom, adjusting her blouse for the umpteenth time. The soft rustle of fabric was the only sound in the room as she meticulously smoothed the creases of her skirt. She had practiced her answers over and over again, but now that the moment was finally here, nerves threatened to undo her careful composure. It was just an interview, she told herself. Just a conversation. Yet it felt like so much more. This was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years. An opportunity that could change her life forever. She glanced at the clock. The meeting with James Harrison was in less than an hour, and yet she still felt unprepared. The mirror didn't lie. She was young, eager, and perhaps too inexperienced. What did someone like James see in a small-town girl like her? Anna had researched everything there was to know about the millionaire businessman. His career, his wealth, his sharp reputation. But she couldn't shake the feeling that he would see right through her, as though her ambitions were nothing more than a flimsy disguise. Anna's phone buzzed from the desk, a message from her mother. Don't forget to be careful, Anna. The world isn't what it seems. There are people out there who will take advantage of you. Anna sighed, her chest tightening. She had heard these words so many times before, each one heavy with caution and concern. Her mother was protective, almost to the point of suffocation. When Anna had told her she'd been selected for an interview with James Harrison, her mother had reacted with unease, speaking in vague terms about the dangers of dealing with wealthy, powerful men. But Anna wasn't like her mother. She wasn't afraid of taking risks. She wasn't afraid of stepping into unknown territory, even if it meant leaving the safety of Riverton behind. She had dreams of a career that would define her, dreams of a life that wasn't dictated by the past. Anna refused to let her mother's fears hold her back. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her coat and made her way to the door. Her mother was waiting downstairs as usual, her eyes full of silent worry. Anna tried to smile to ease the tension, but it was impossible. There was a palpable heaviness between them that had only grown as Anna's ambitions had expanded beyond the small, familiar world they had built together. "Good luck, sweetheart," her mother said quietly, her voice full of love and unspoken concern. "I'll be fine, Mom," Anna replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "This is what I've been working for." As she stepped out the door, Anna couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She knew her mother only wanted to protect her, but Anna also knew she had to forge her own path. And that path led her far away from Riverton, and most of all, away from her mother's constant watchful eyes. The drive to the city was a blur, her mind racing with thoughts of the interview, the possibilities, and the weight of the decision that lay ahead. When she finally arrived at the towering office building, her nerves were nearly unbearable. The polished glass walls gleamed in the sunlight, and the sleek modern lobby smelled of freshly brewed coffee and polished wood. This was a world far removed from the humble bookstore she had worked at for so long. But as she stepped onto the elevator and ascended to the top floor, Anna felt a surge of determination. This was her moment. No matter how daunting or intimidating it seemed, she was ready. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Anna stepped into the stark modern lobby of James Harrison's office. The space was immaculate, filled with polished marble floors and sleek, minimalistic furniture that seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. A soft light filtered through tall windows that framed a view of the city skyline, a city that now felt like a far-off dream, too distant to touch. Anna's heart raced as she approached the receptionist's desk, the woman behind it greeting her with a practiced smile. "Ms. Harrison is expecting you," she said, motioning toward a hallway that led deeper into the building. "Please follow me." As they walked down the long corridor, Anna tried to steady her breath. The walls were lined with abstract art, each piece more expensive and refined than anything she had ever seen in Riverton. It felt as if she were walking through a gallery, surrounded by the fruits of a world she had never been part of, and yet desperately wanted to join. Finally, they reached a set of heavy wooden doors that opened into James Harrison's office. The moment Anna stepped inside, she felt both awed and dwarfed by the sheer opulence. The space was grand but cold, filled with towering bookshelves, sleek leather furniture, and a massive, imposing desk made of dark mahogany. Behind it sat James Harrison himself, tall, composed, and impossibly confident. He stood up as Anna entered, offering her a smile that, while polite, held a certain distance. He extended his hand, and Anna shook it, her palm feeling small in his firm grasp. "Anna, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please have a seat," James said, his voice smooth, but with a hint of authority that made her feel both nervous and intrigued. As she sat down across from him, she felt the weight of the space around them, the years of success and wealth that hung in the air like a tangible presence. James Harrison didn't just inhabit this office. He owned it, and Anna couldn't help but wonder if she would ever truly belong in a place like this. But then her gaze drifted to the desk, specifically to the dark-framed photograph placed slightly off-center near a stack of papers. The woman in the photo was beautiful, her face soft yet somehow hardened by the weight of something unspoken. Her dark hair framed her face in soft waves, and her eyes held a depth that seemed to call out to Anna, even though the image was in black and white. Anna's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she forgot the interview entirely. There was something so familiar about this woman. Her features, so striking, so captivating, reminded Anna of something deep within herself, a connection she couldn't quite place. James followed Anna's gaze, and she quickly tore her eyes away from the photo, embarrassed by her sudden distraction. He didn't seem to mind, though, and a small smile played at the corners of his lips. "That's Evelyn," he said, his voice softening as he spoke. "My late wife." His words hung in the air for a moment, and Anna's curiosity only deepened. She had heard of James's late wife before. Everyone in the business world had, but there had never been much said beyond the fact that she had passed away years ago. But now, seeing the softness in his eyes as he spoke of her, Anna felt as if there were a story there, something untold, something deeply personal. Evelyn was someone special, James continued, his gaze momentarily distant. "I still miss her every day." Anna nodded, her throat tightening as she tried to focus on the interview, but her mind kept returning to that photograph. Evelyn. There was something about her. Something Anna couldn't quite explain. She wanted to ask more, To know who this woman was beyond the elegant smile and the cold frame, but she had a job to do. This was her moment to prove herself, to show that she was more than just a small-town girl. But even as she forced herself to stay in the present, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that the photo, and the woman in it, held the key to something much bigger than this job, something that was about to change her life forever. The interview continued with James Harrison asking her typical questions about her experience and qualifications. Anna responded with confidence, her rehearsed answers flowing more easily now. She spoke of her background in marketing and the skills she'd honed at her small-town job, but as she spoke, her mind wandered back to her dreams, the ones that had kept her going through sleepless nights and countless sacrifices. She wasn't just looking for a job, she was looking for a life. "I want more than just to get by," Anna said. Her voice steady but laced with an intensity she hadn't fully realized until now. "I want to build something big. I want to make an impact. I'm not just looking for a paycheck. I want to prove that someone from my background can succeed in a world like this." James leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering as he listened. Anna wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Was she just another young, ambitious woman trying to make it in a cutthroat world? Did her story even matter to him? "There's a lot of competition, Anna," he said, his tone neutral yet thoughtful. "What makes you different?" For a moment, Anna felt a rush of panic, but then the answer came to her, clear and certain. She was different because she had the fire inside her. She had the hunger to do more than just survive. She wanted to thrive, to leave her small-town life behind and build something that mattered. "I'm not afraid to work hard," Anna said, her voice gaining strength. "And I don't come with baggage. I'm focused, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything for success. I've been doing it my whole life. That's what sets me apart." James studied her, his expression unreadable, before giving a slow nod. "Ambition is a powerful thing. But ambition without purpose can be dangerous." His words echoed in Anna's mind long after he said them, but she pushed them aside. She didn't have time to think about purpose, not when her dreams were so close to being within reach. She had to stay focused. As the interview continued, Anna's frustration with her mother grew in the background of her thoughts. Her mother had always told her to be cautious, be careful with people who had too much power or too much money. She had warned Anna not to trust people like James Harrison. But Anna had grown tired of hearing it. Every time she mentioned her dreams, her mother's response was the same. "Don't get too big for your britches, Anna. Remember where you came from." In Riverton, it was always the same narrative. Small-town girls didn't make it. They married young, had kids, and lived simple lives. That was the path her mother had chosen, and in many ways, she wanted Anna to choose it too. But Anna wanted something else. She wanted to escape the limited possibilities of her past, the constant feeling of being defined by where she came from. The gap between Anna and her mother seemed to widen each day. Her mother's warnings, though well-intentioned, felt like chains, holding her back from the life she knew she was meant to live. Her heart ached with a quiet frustration. How could she make her mother understand that this was her moment? That the life she dreamed of, one of independence and success, wasn't something to fear, but something to be embraced? Despite her focus on the interview, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something was missing in her understanding of the situation. She had to admit, the photo of Evelyn on the desk still lingered in her mind, distracting her. Every few moments, her eyes would flicker toward the dark frame, and she couldn't help but be drawn to the woman's striking features. Evelyn's eyes seemed to peer directly at her, as though trying to say something, though the photograph remained silent. Anna tried to ignore it. This was her chance to impress James, not to get lost in some strange, lingering connection with a dead woman. But just as she forced her attention back to the conversation, James broke the silence, almost as if reading her mind. "The woman in the photo is my late wife, Evelyn," he said, his voice quieter than before. The softness with which he spoke was surprising, and it made Anna look up, meeting his eyes for the first time since the interview had started. His expression softened even more as he looked at the photo, and for a brief moment, Anna saw a flicker of something she couldn't place. Pain, nostalgia, longing? It was gone so quickly that Anna wasn't sure she had seen it at all, but she felt it, an echo of something raw, unspoken. Evelyn. The name felt heavy in the air. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she tried to reconcile the woman in the photo with the image of the strong, confident businessman sitting across from her. She'd heard whispers about James's late wife, the tragic story of her untimely death, but there had always been gaps in the narrative. No one seemed to know much about Evelyn beyond the fact that she had died young. But now, staring at the photograph, Anna wondered what Evelyn had been like. What had she meant to James? And why did it feel like her own fate was somehow intertwined with this woman's memory? James's tone shifted, pulling Anna back to the present. Evelyn passed away some years ago. It hasn't been easy, but you learn to move on eventually. Anna nodded, her thoughts still tangled in the mystery of Evelyn's life. She felt like there was something she wasn't being told, something hidden behind the sorrow in James's voice. She felt drawn to this woman she'd never met, but her curiosity remained carefully concealed beneath the professional demeanor she had worked so hard to maintain. As the interview drew to a close, Anna's mind was in turmoil. She was on the verge of a breakthrough in her career, but all she could think about was Evelyn and the strange pull the photograph seemed to have on her. Was it just a coincidence? Was she simply imagining the eerie sense of familiarity that seemed to resonate deep within her when she looked at the photo? The interview wrapped up, and James Harrison stood, extending his hand toward Anna once again. "I think you'll be a great fit here, Anna. We'll be in touch soon," he said. His voice businesslike now, the warmth of the earlier conversation fading into polite professionalism. Anna smiled, shaking his hand, but her mind was elsewhere. She had gotten the impression that James was impressed. He had asked her to send over her references, which she took as a positive sign, but the feeling of unease gnawed at her. As she left the building and made her way down the sleek, glass-lined hallway, the photograph lingered in her mind. The woman in the frame seemed to haunt her thoughts, and she couldn't escape the pull she felt toward Evelyn's image. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, and for a moment, Anna considered ignoring it. She had promised herself she wouldn't talk about the interview with her mother right away. But the weight of the day, the intensity of the interview, the mystery of the photograph, it was all too much to hold inside. She needed to share it, needed to ask her mother if there was something she knew that Anna didn't. As she dialed her mother's number, a sense of dread washed over her. When her mother picked up, Anna could hear the tension in her voice. "Anna, how did it go?" her mother asked, though the question sounded more like a premonition. Anna hesitated for a moment, then decided to ask the one question that had been consuming her since she stepped out of James's office. "Mom, do you know who Evelyn is?" Anna's voice was casual, though her heart was pounding. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, so long that Anna wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, her mother spoke, her voice lower than usual. "Why do you ask about her?" "I saw a photo of her in James Harrison's office," Anna said, trying to keep the curiosity in her voice masked as casual interest. "He said she was his late wife. But, Mom, I don't know why, but I feel like I know her. I don't know how to explain it." Another long pause followed, and when her mother finally spoke again, her words were carefully measured. "Anna, the past is a place best left behind. Don't go digging into things you don't understand." Anna's heart skipped a beat. There was something in her mother's tone, a mixture of fear and regret, that made her pulse quicken. Whatever connection existed between her family and Evelyn, it wasn't something her mother wanted to revisit. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. More than what her mother was telling her. As Anna left James Harrison's towering office building, she felt as though she was stepping into a dream, and yet, something about it still felt like a nightmare. The elegant glass doors whooshed shut behind her with a soft thud, but she remained outside, rooted to the sidewalk, her heart still racing. The interview had gone well, perhaps even better than she'd expected, but the sense of unease gnawed at her, a strange weight pressing down on her chest. She could still feel the lingering gaze of the woman in the photograph, the way Evelyn's eyes seemed to follow her, even after she'd left the room. It was unsettling. Anna couldn't understand why this photograph, this woman, felt so familiar. Had she really seen Evelyn before, or was it simply the photograph itself, so hauntingly vivid, that sparked this irrational feeling of recognition? No, Anna thought, shaking her head as she stood on the sidewalk, staring at the bustling city around her. It was just her nerves playing tricks on her. She couldn't afford to get distracted. This was her chance to break free from the small-town life she had always known. She couldn't afford to lose focus now. Still, as she walked to the bus stop, she felt a rising sense of dread. Her mind kept replaying the moment when James had spoken of Evelyn with such melancholy. His late wife. But there had been something in his voice, something deep and unspoken, that hinted at a more complicated history. A history Anna wasn't sure she was ready to uncover. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from her mother. Asterisk, how did it go? Will you be coming home soon? Asterisk. Anna stared at the text for a few moments, unsure how to respond. She had been planning to tell her mother everything, about the interview, the job, the picture, but something told her that it wasn't the right time. She needed to think about it more, make sense of everything before sharing it. After all, her mother had always been cautious about James Harrison, about men like him, and Anna had grown tired of hearing the warnings. Asterisk, don't get involved with powerful people, Anna. You never know what kind of danger they might bring into your life, asterisk. Anna had always dismissed her mother's warnings. Her mother's view of the world was narrow, rooted in fear of what she didn't understand. But now, after seeing that photograph, Anna wasn't so sure. The connection between Evelyn and her mother. It couldn't just be a coincidence. Her mother had known Evelyn. But how? Before Anna could reply to her mother's text, the sound of her phone ringing startled her. It was her mother calling. Anna's stomach tightened. Hello, Anna said, trying to sound casual, though her voice betrayed her unease. Her mother's voice came through, strained and cautious. Anna, listen to me. There's something you need to understand. This isn't just about a job. Don't get caught up in things you don't understand. James Harrison is not the kind of man you think he is. And that woman in the photo, Evelyn, she's part of something you don't want to know about. Anna's heart raced. What are you talking about, Mom? Who is Evelyn really? Why won't you tell me more? There was a long pause on the other end of the line before her mother responded, her voice trembling. I can't explain it all over the phone. But Anna, you need to be careful. The past is buried for a reason. Don't dig it up. Some things are better left untouched. Anna's mind was spinning. She had to know more. There was something about Evelyn, something about her connection to James, that felt too important to ignore. I'll be home in a bit, Anna said, hanging up quickly before her mother could say anything more. When Anna arrived home later that afternoon, the house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Her mother was in the kitchen, washing dishes, but she stopped as soon as Anna walked through the door. Anna, we need to talk, her mother said, her voice low and urgent. You don't understand. You have to let this go. Anna stared at her mother, her pulse quickening. This wasn't the time for silence, for avoiding difficult truths. She had come too far, she needed answers. No, Mom, Anna said, her voice firm. I need to know. Who is Evelyn? What happened between you and James Harrison? Her mother's face paled, and she wiped her hands on a dish towel, her fingers trembling slightly. Anna had never seen her mother look so unsettled. The change was subtle, but it was there. Something hidden, something painful lurking behind her mother's eyes. Evelyn. Evelyn was a part of my past, her mother began slowly, her words careful, measured. But that's all she should be. A part of the past. Anna shook her head, refusing to back down. I don't believe that. There's more to this story. I saw the photo of her in James's office. You knew her, didn't you? You knew her well. Her mother's eyes flickered with a mixture of guilt and something else, a deep, aching sadness. She sighed and sat down at the kitchen table, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the years had suddenly become too much to bear. I never wanted you to know, Anna, her mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But I guess it's time you did. Anna sat across from her mother, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. The moment when everything would come to light. Evelyn was my best friend, her mother continued. I met her when I was young and she was beautiful, lively, full of dreams. We were inseparable. And then I met James. He was a different man back then, charming, kind. He made me feel special, important. But there was always something about him that felt like he was hiding something. Something that even he didn't understand. Anna's eyes widened. What happened? Her mother took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly together in her lap. James and I were in love, Anna. We were going to be married. But then I found out I was pregnant with you. I was terrified. I didn't think he was ready to be a father. He was already so focused on his career. And Evelyn, her voice broke for a moment, and she swallowed hard. Evelyn was heartbroken. She loved him too. I couldn't stay, Anna. I couldn't live with the thought of tearing them apart. So I left. I moved away and raised you on my own. But Evelyn, she never forgave me. And James, he never forgave me either. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Her mother had been in love with James Harrison. And Evelyn had been her best friend, her confidant. Anna suddenly felt as though the world she had known was collapsing beneath her feet. And James, he doesn't know about you, Anna. Not until now, her mother said softly. I never told him. Couldn't. I thought if I kept you away from him, maybe it would protect you. The silence between them was thick, heavy with unspoken words. Anna's mind was a whirlwind, torn between disbelief and an overwhelming sense of understanding. Her mother had kept this secret for so long, but now it seemed everything was changing. The weight of her mother's words hung in the air, and Anna's head spun with the implications. She had always suspected that her mother's past held secrets, but she had never imagined anything like this. James Harrison, the man who could offer her the life she dreamed of, was also the man her mother had once loved. And Evelyn, the woman who had haunted Anna's thoughts all day, was tied to that love in ways she hadn't fully understood. Anna stood up, her emotions swirling. So I'm connected to him. To James, she said quietly, almost to herself. Her mother nodded slowly. It's possible, Anna. He's the father I never told you about. But I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to get caught up in that world. Anna's chest tightened as the realization hit her with full force. James Harrison might be her father. The man she had just interviewed with, the man who had offered her a job, might be her biological father. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Anna asked, her voice breaking. Her mother's face twisted in regret. I thought it was better this way, Anna. I thought you'd be safer, away from him, away from the man who couldn't be the father you deserved. But now you have to decide for yourself what you want. Anna took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. Everything she thought she knew about her life had just been turned upside down. And yet, as she stood there, facing the truth for the first time, she realized that nothing could be undone. The past had been hidden for so long, but now it was here, in the open, waiting for her to face it. What would she do next? The days following her confrontation with her mother were an emotional blur for Anna. She couldn't shake the sense of disbelief that lingered, making it hard to focus on anything else. Her life, everything she thought she knew about her family, had been turned upside down. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw James's face, the man who had hired her, who seemed so distant yet so familiar now. Was he really her father? The idea that James Harrison, the millionaire businessman, could be her father was something Anna could hardly fathom. It felt like a dream, a surreal twist of fate that she had no control over. She spent hours replaying the conversation with her mother in her mind. Her mother's voice, so soft, so regretful, echoed in her head. Asterisk, I thought it was better this way, Anna. I thought you'd be safer. Asterisk. But safe from what? From who? Safe from James. Or was her mother trying to protect her from the pain of an unknown truth, one that would force Anna to reckon with a past that had been hidden from her for so long? The more Anna thought about it, the more confused she became. She had always wanted more from life, more than the small-town confines she had grown up in. She had wanted the opportunity to make a name for herself, to prove that she was capable of achieving something greater. Now, that dream seemed intertwined with a man she barely knew, and a past she never imagined. The questions piled up, one on top of the other. What had happened between her mother and James? Why had she left him? Why had her mother kept the truth from her for all these years? Anna had to know the answers. But the uncertainty gnawed at her. Even if James was her father, would he accept her? Would he want anything to do with her? She wasn't sure how to navigate this new reality, but one thing was certain. She couldn't ignore the growing need to confront James again, to get answers from him directly. The next morning, Anna made the decision to visit James Harrison's office. She had no plan, no rehearsed speech, but she knew she couldn't keep going in circles, caught between the fragments of the truth. She needed to see James again. Walking into his office felt like stepping into another world. The polished wood floors, the sleek, modern furniture, everything about this space screamed success. James sat behind his massive desk, his expression calm, yet there was a subtle wariness in his eyes as he looked up at her from his paperwork. He had clearly been expecting her. "Anna, I'm glad you're here," he said. His voice warm but distant, as if he were trying to mask something behind his professional demeanor. Anna hesitated before she spoke, her throat tight. The words she needed to say had been building inside her all week, but they were harder to express than she had imagined. Finally, after a long pause, she blurted out, "I need to know about my mother. And Evelyn. And you." James's eyebrows furrowed, and for the first time since their first meeting, he seemed unsure, almost caught off guard. He sat back in his chair, his eyes briefly closing as if gathering his thoughts. He had always been so composed, so in control, but now there was a flicker of vulnerability in his expression. "I know you're confused, Anna," he said, his tone quiet but firm. "I know this is a lot to take in. But the truth isn't simple. Your mother. She made a choice a long time ago to keep you away from me. I never wanted to hurt her, or you." Anna's chest tightened. The air between them felt thick with unspoken truths, and she wasn't sure if she could bear the weight of them. But she pressed on, refusing to back down. "You loved her, didn't you?" Anna asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. "You loved my mother. And Evelyn. What happened to her?" James's gaze softened, but there was an undeniable sadness in his eyes. He stood up slowly, walking over to the large window that overlooked the city. "Evelyn was the love of my life, but she was also my greatest regret. Our lives were tangled in ways that we couldn't escape. I loved your mother too, Anna, but she left when she found out she was pregnant. She didn't think I could be the man she needed, the father you deserved." Anna felt her stomach twist. There it was, the confession that her mother had left out, the missing piece of the puzzle. But there was more, something deeper in James's words that made her feel as though she had stumbled into an even darker secret. "So, what about me?" Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "What does all of this mean for me?" James turned around slowly, his face solemn. "It means you have a choice to make, Anna. You can choose to accept me, to know me for who I am, or you can walk away. I can't make that decision for you." The silence between them was heavy, but Anna finally found the strength to speak again. "I want to know the truth. All of it. I need to know who I am," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. James's eyes lingered on her for a moment, as if searching for something he wasn't sure he would find. Then finally he nodded. "I think you already know, Anna," he said softly. "But I'll tell you everything. I owe you that much." It wasn't until later that day, when James invited Anna to a more private meeting in his home, that the full truth came to light. The house was eerily quiet, far removed from the buzz of his office. The moment they sat down, James spoke candidly, not shying away from the painful details of his past. "You were born at a time when everything was uncertain," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Evelyn was my anchor, but she was also my downfall. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to remarry, to open my heart again. I thought if I focused on building my career, it would keep the pain at bay. But I always wondered about you, Anna. I always wondered if you were mine. The revelation hit Anna harder than she anticipated. For so long, she had been unsure of her place in the world. But now, hearing James's words, she understood just how much he had struggled with this same question. You never wanted to be part of my life, Anna said, the bitterness rising in her chest. I was just a forgotten part of the past, something that didn't fit into your world. James's expression softened, and for the first time, Anna saw the depth of regret in his eyes. I never wanted you to feel abandoned, Anna. I didn't know how to be a father. I thought I wasn't capable of giving you what you needed, so I kept my distance. A long silence followed. Anna's mind raced, torn between the anger she felt for the years of uncertainty, and the need to understand, to make sense of this tangled web of emotions. I don't know how to feel, Anna whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know who I am anymore. James stood up, walking over to where Anna sat. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle. You are my daughter, Anna. Whether you want to accept that or not, you have a right to know the truth. And I'm here now. I'll be here for you if you'll let me. Anna looked up at him, the weight of the moment crashing down on her. She had always dreamed of being more than what she was, but now she wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Could she embrace this new reality? Could she reconcile the truth of her family with the life she had always imagined for herself? The answer wasn't clear. But Anna knew deep down that she couldn't turn away from it. She had come too far, and the journey ahead, though uncertain, was hers to take. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotions and changes. Anna's relationship with James, though still new and fragile, had begun to take shape. At first, there was hesitation, a distance between them that neither of them could fully bridge. But slowly, James began to make an effort. He invited Anna to his home on several occasions, trying to make up for lost time, attempting to build a bond where one had never been allowed to grow. Anna was still grappling with the weight of it all. There was so much she didn't understand, so many questions she had yet to ask. But she felt something shifting within her. Something that had been buried under layers of pain and confusion was beginning to thaw. James, though imperfect and scarred by his own regrets, was trying. And that meant more to her than she had initially thought possible. Her mother, though reluctant at first, was also part of this slow process of healing. When Anna told her that she'd been meeting with James, her mother's reaction had been one of quiet acceptance. There were no more harsh words or refusals. Instead, her mother had gone silent, lost in her own thoughts, her own memories of a past that she had buried so deeply. But in time, she agreed to meet James once more. It was a fragile reunion, one that began with a quiet dinner in the Harrison mansion. Anna watched as her mother and James exchanged polite greetings, the awkwardness hanging heavy between them like a thick fog. Anna, sitting between them, felt the weight of the years of silence, the unspoken emotions that hovered just beneath the surface. Over dinner, James tried to break the ice, speaking softly about the memories he and her mother shared. Do you remember the time we went to Paris? He asked her mother, his voice tinged with nostalgia. It was the first time we saw the Eiffel Tower together. You were wearing that red scarf that you loved. Her mother's eyes softened at the memory, though her lips remained sealed. She glanced at Anna, and Anna could almost hear the thoughts swirling in her mind. She was realizing that the past could no longer be ignored, that the truth was too great to be hidden any longer. By the end of the evening, there were no grand reconciliations, no tearful moments of understanding. But there was a small shift, a quiet recognition that, despite the pain, they could still share this moment together. For Anna, that was enough. She didn't need perfection, she needed honesty. And they were finally on the path toward it. As time passed, Anna began to embrace the changes that were happening in her life. She had accepted the job offer from James, not because it was handed to her on a silver platter, but because it represented something more, an opportunity to step into a new world where she could make her own way. It wasn't easy. The first few weeks at the company were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and trying to find her footing in a world that was so far removed from the small town she'd come from. But as the days went on, Anna realized she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She had the skills, the drive, and now she had the resources to make things happen. James had taken her under his wing, not just as an employee, but as someone he saw potential in. At first, their interactions were formal, professional. He gave her assignments that challenged her, pushed her limits, and slowly, she began to prove herself. James never treated her with any special favor, but he recognized her intelligence, her determination, and her ability to take charge when needed. As the weeks went by, Anna grew more confident, more at ease in her new role. Her mother, though still cautious and protective, was beginning to see the positive changes in Anna. The two of them talked more often, and there was a softening in her mother's approach. It wasn't perfect. There were still days of silence, of hesitation, but it was progress. Anna was no longer the scared girl from the small town, clinging to her mother's apron strings. She was a woman finding her own way, learning to balance her past with her future. And then there was James. The man who had once seemed so distant, so impossible to relate to, was now a part of her life in a way that Anna hadn't anticipated. They shared occasional lunches, brief conversations about the direction of the company, and sometimes late-night talks about their families and the choices they had made. James had always been a man of few words, but his support for Anna was clear. He respected her boundaries, never pushing her to accept more than she was willing to give. Slowly, they formed a relationship, one built on mutual respect but also, surprisingly, on something deeper. Anna wasn't sure what it was yet, whether it was the remnants of a lost father-daughter bond or something more complicated, but it was there, quietly growing in the background of their professional relationship. For Anna, this new chapter in her life was both exhilarating and daunting. She had the career she had dreamed of, but at the same time, she carried the weight of a past that refused to let go. Her mother's regrets, James's secrets, they were all part of the same story, the same tangled web of emotions that Anna was still learning to navigate. But she was no longer running from it. She was facing it step by step. And that was enough for now. A few months later, Anna found herself at a grave site, standing beside her mother and James. The three of them had come together, not out of obligation, but out of a shared need for closure. It was a bright, crisp morning, and the air felt thick with the weight of the past. They had come to honor the woman who had been the catalyst for all of this, the woman who had brought them together, even after death. Evelyn's grave was simple, unadorned, but in its quietness, there was a certain peace. Anna knelt beside it, running her fingers over the cold stone, reading the name engraved there. Evelyn Harrison. She had never known the woman, never known the depths of her life with James, or the way she had shaped the course of everything that had happened since. But in this moment, Anna felt a connection, a bond between them, however tenuous it may have been. James stood beside her, his hands in his pockets, his gaze distant. Her mother, though silent, was close, her presence a soft reassurance. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the cool breeze, the weight of the moment. She felt the quiet hum of something new beginning. It wasn't just the career, the job, or the family she was learning to accept. It was her own identity. She was learning who she was in relation to her past, her family, and her future. When she opened her eyes, she turned to James, her mother, and then to the horizon. There was so much still unknown, but for the first time in a long time, Anna felt ready to step forward. Her future was no longer a mystery. It was her own to shape.